Before he held a sword, Musashi held nothing. Not in his hand, not in his mind, not in his heart. Just emptiness. A space where no fear could grow, no craving could take root, no opponent could enter. He didn't fight from anger. He didn't train for glory. He didn't move from desire. Because Musashi knew, desire makes you soft. Desire clouds the moment. Desire gives the world a weapon against you. In the Book of Five Rings, he wrote not like a swordsman, but like a monk who had seen through the illusion of wanting, not because he had nothing, but because he understood what it means to not need. We think emptiness is absence. We're wrong. Emptiness is clarity. Emptiness is control. Emptiness is peace so deep that even chaos can't touch it. He called it mushin, no mind. Not blankness but stillness. Not numbness but freedom from distraction. Not detachment from life, but from grasping at it. Because when you desire, you lean, you reach, you hesitate. And in that hesitation, you break your form. You open your center. You become visible, predictable, weak. Desire is the first crack in the blade. And Musashi was not interested in cracks. He wanted something cleaner, something sharper, not just in steel but in self. To him, the sword was not a weapon, it was a mirror. And the emptiness he cultivated was not strategy, it was identity. The warrior who wants is already defeated. The warrior who is needs nothing, and so cannot be touched. That is the way Musashi walked, not toward victory but toward absence. The absence of wanting, the absence of fear, the absence of illusion. And in that absence, he became unstoppable. Desire wears many faces: ambition, victory, recognition, control, even peace. But Musashi saw it for what it was: a mask, a trick, a weakness dressed as purpose. Because when you want something, truly want it, you give it the power to move you, to unbalance you, to own you. And once something owns you, you are no longer dangerous. You are predictable, reactive, soft. Musashi wrote, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake, not because pleasure is bad, but because seeking binds you. Wanting creates a story. I will be satisfied if I get this, but that if is a trap, because it places your center outside of you, in the future, in the hands of others, in conditions you don't control. A warrior who fights for outcome fights with tension, and tension breaks timing, it clouds vision, it makes the sword shake. But the one who does not want, the one who acts from stillness, sees everything. Because he's not looking through the fog of what if. He's not distracted by hope, or hunger, or fear of loss. He is here, and here is where power lives." In a world of endless striving, Musashi's clarity was radical. He didn't tell you to want less. He told you to see wanting itself as a trap. Because what you want owns you. What you cling to defines you. And if you can be defined, you can be controlled. Musashi walked the path of detachment, not as an escape, but as a discipline. Because only from detachment can action be clean, can movement be pure, can the strike land with no hesitation. And when you act without wanting, you do not miss, because there is nothing in you that resists the moment. You are not chasing, you are cutting, cleanly, quietly, without ego. That is the Musashi way. The moment is everything. In battle, in life, in the still space between thought and action. And Musashi knew, you cannot see the moment clearly if you are hungry. Hunger distorts. It narrows your vision. It makes you see not what is, but what you want to be there. Desire fills the mind with noise, with projection, with outcome. You swing the sword not to cut, but to win. You speak the truth not to express, but to impress. You move not from the center, but from need. And when that happens, you're no longer in reality. You're in fantasy, a step removed from the present, a beat too slow, a thought too far. Musashi never allowed that. He didn't romanticize the moment. He trained for it. He carved away every thought that didn't belong, until only presence remained. To him, clarity was a weapon, not emotionless, but pure, uncluttered, direct. He once said, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." How do you perceive the invisible? You remove the fog, the hunger, the thirst for outcome, and then you begin to see. Not just the opponent, but their intent, their rhythm, their fear, their opening. And not just them, but yourself. How your own thoughts rise like waves and pull you out of form. The fighter who is driven by desire becomes rigid, but the one who empties himself flows. And in that flow, he moves not second by second, but in time itself, like water, like inevitability. That's why Musashi wasn't obsessed with technique. He was obsessed with presence, because the clearest mind is the most dangerous blade. And clarity is impossible when you are hungry. In the duel, people see two fighters, two blades, two wills clashing. But Musashi saw only one true opponent, the self. Not because he romanticized struggle, but because he understood it. Understood that most defeats don't happen when the enemy strikes, but when you betray your center. Fear does that. Ego does that. And above all, desire does that. When you step into battle wanting to win, you're already compromised. Your center leans forward. Your attention splits. Your breath stutters. Because you are no longer fully here. You're trying to protect an outcome. And when you do that, you're fighting the enemy with only half of yourself. Musashi wrote, "In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close and to take a distance view of close things." What he meant was this: if your mind is attached, it will always lie to you. Desire makes things look urgent when they're not. It makes danger look like opportunity. It makes you rush. It makes you hesitate. It makes you emotional. But emotion is not your ally. Clarity is. Musashi understood that the fight was never about the sword. It was about the space behind the sword, about what fills your mind as your body moves. If that space is full of need, pride, or tension, you're vulnerable. But if that space is empty, then no enemy can find you. Because how do you strike what has no opening? How do you outmaneuver someone who isn't reaching, grasping, or resisting? You don't. You lose. The opponent isn't the problem. They are only the mirror. They reflect the state you bring into the moment. And if that state is infected with desire, you've already defeated yourself. Musashi trained for one thing: immovable inner stillness. Not coldness, not cruelty, but complete composure. Because when you need nothing, you're faster, calmer, cleaner. And when you move from that place, the world stops being your battlefield. It becomes your reflection. Attachment is hesitation in disguise. To be attached to outcome, to ego, to safety, is to carry weight you can't afford to carry in a moment that demands lightness, precision, clarity. Musashi knew this. He wrote, "To become the enemy, see yourself as the enemy. And what does the enemy exploit first? Your hesitation, your need, your fear of loss. Because the moment you're attached, you second guess, you pull your strike, you delay your truth. You hesitate not because you lack skill, but because you don't want to lose something. And that wanting is the beginning of defeat. Musashi taught that the highest state of the warrior is not aggression but non-attachment. You don't desire to win. You don't fear losing. You don't flinch when the moment asks for total presence. Because when you are unattached, you move instantly. You strike when it's time, not when you feel ready. You act without rehearsal. You cut without apology. You speak without asking permission. This isn't recklessness. It's alignment. And only someone who has let go can respond like that. To live without attachment is to move like water, to shift like wind, to hold nothing, and so be held back by nothing. In this state, there is no internal friction, no inner debate, no divided self arguing between should I and what if. There is only presence, and from presence comes speed, from speed power, from power silence. Because the most powerful movements make no noise. Musashi's emptiness wasn't void, it was readiness, a blade without tension, a mind without clutter, a self with nothing to lose. No attachment, no hesitation, only action. And that, in the moment, is everything. We live in a world that glorifies passion. Follow it, fuel it, burn for something, and call that meaning. But Musashi didn't burn. He refined. He didn't speak of fire, he spoke of form. Not about feeling something deeply, but about doing something clearly, again and again, until the self disappears and only movement remains. Because passion fades, discipline endures. Passion wants motivation. Discipline shows up when there's none. Passion is emotional. It rises fast and crashes faster. But discipline? It's quiet. It's unsentimental. It doesn't care how you feel. It only cares what you do. Musashi's strength didn't come from intensity. It came from rhythm, from a life where every action sharpened the edge of the next, where the sword was lifted not for glory but because it was time. In the Book of Five Rings, he rarely talks about inspiration, but he speaks constantly of repetition, timing, awareness, distancing, adjusting, cutting. Because for Musashi, greatness was not about feeling powerful, but about becoming precise. Discipline strips away the ego. It doesn't ask if you want to, it asks if you're aligned. Are your actions coming from center, or from craving, from stability, or from need? Musashi didn't trust passion because passion wants an outcome. Discipline trusts only the process, the form, the rhythm. And in that rhythm, you become unshakable. You are no longer chasing emotion. You are no longer driven by mood. You move because it's time to move. You strike because it's time to strike. You speak because silence has passed. And in that moment, you are free. Not because you feel like it, but because you are anchored. Passion is a fire, but discipline is a blade, and Musashi chose the blade. Winning is not about wanting. Wanting clouds the strike. Wanting tightens the breath. Wanting makes you hesitate. Musashi saw this clearly. To him, the one who wants to win is already off balance, because wanting comes from lack, from fear, from a belief that I am not enough unless I succeed. And that belief is a crack in the center. He wrote, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain." He wasn't talking about tactics. He was talking about detachment, Because Musashi didn't fight to win. He fought to express the way. And when you move from the way, not the want, you become something else. You become clear, unbound, unhurried, sharp. Most people lose, not because they lack skill, but because they need the outcome. And that need becomes a leash. When you want to win, you force the timing. When you need to win, you ignore your intuition. When you fear losing, you abandon the present moment. But when you have no desire, you are free to act perfectly. Not recklessly, not passively, but from total presence. To Musashi, the highest level of mastery was not dominance, it was emptiness. Because from emptiness, you don't try, you respond. You don't anticipate, you read. You don't chase, you receive. And in that state, winning is no longer something you do. It's something that happens. Without effort, without obsession, without need. You win not because you reach for it, but because nothing in you resists what is required. And that is the paradox. To win, you must not want to win. You must want nothing, need nothing, only act. And action, when clean, is victory itself. What can the world take from a man who wants nothing? What threat matters to someone who has nothing to prove? What fear survives in the mind of one who does not grasp? Musashi lived his life by one principle. Emptiness is invincibility. When you hold no desire, you leave no weakness exposed. You cannot be bribed by comfort. You cannot be baited by praise. You cannot be destroyed by loss. Because you already gave it up. Not in surrender, but in discipline. In one of his final writings, Musashi said, "Resentment and complaint are appropriate neither for oneself nor others." Why? Because resentment is the shadow of expectation, and expectation is just desire in disguise. You don't resent what you don't cling to. You don't suffer for what you don't chase. You don't break from what you don't depend on. Musashi walked alone, not out of bitterness, but because he refused to be owned, not by fame, not by approval, not even by victory. He wasn't interested in being known. He was interested in being free. And freedom begins the moment you stop saying, "I need." The man who desires nothing doesn't flinch. He doesn't chase. He doesn't resist the shape of the moment. He moves with it because he has no stake in altering it. And that man can't be broken, because there's no crack to reach inside, no hook to pull, no string to tug, just stillness, just precision, just form. The one who wants can always be manipulated, but the one who wants nothing moves like truth. Clean, sharp, unbothered. So Musashi's legacy is not just the duels he won, it's the way he stood, unmoved, clear, untouchable. Because to live without desire is not to lose yourself, it's to reclaim yourself. To live unbroken, to live complete, to live ready.